From coast to coast, the Pac-12 to the SEC and every conference in between, Stoney Keeley and Stephen McCash break down all the action from the week that was in college football, react to the AP Top 25 poll, talk Heisman race, and dive into all of the most interesting lines of the week based on what the odds makers are saying in the SEC and on the national scale. This is the College Football Roundup on Sobros Network.
Welcome back for another episode of the College Football Roundup right here on Sobros Network. Mine's right, ass is tight as we tackle episode 11 of the 2024 season. It is your boy, the EIC at Sobros Network, Big Natural Stoney Keeley, joined as always by my co-host on the College Football Roundup. He is the utility man for Sobros Network, Mr. Stephen McCash. McCash, how you doing today, my man?
Man, I'm doing pretty good. I'm drinking with football. See what I did there? Drinking with.
Oh, how about that? Yeah.
If you don't follow along, we host another podcast called Drinking With here on the Sobros Network. But no, I'm doing great. It's 65 in Memphis. It's perfect holiday season weather if there ever was a temperature. So, yeah, I'm ready to dive into the big things that are happening in college football this weekend.
Man, it's crazy. I don't know what the temperature's like up here in Nashville, but it's been dreary all day, just gray skies. It's raining right now. It's just
same here, but it's warm.
Yeah, well, I'll take that. I'll take that over this and cold any day of the week. So yeah. we got a lot to talk about. This is our annual bowl preview show. I don't know how we got here, man. This is crazy. It feels like just last week we were breaking down Georgia Tech and Florida State in the season opener over in Ireland, and yet here we are. Another season's in the books. I think it's safe to say this 12-team playoff race shook down in a way that none of us saw coming in August, but that's what makes the sport fun. And I do think this is going to be quite a fun field with games kicking off with Indiana and Notre Dame on Friday night, the first round this weekend. But McCash, before we dive into the college football playoff bracket, I do want to remind our listeners, if you're watching live on Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube, hop in the comments. Let us know what you think. Engage with the show, and we'll get to your comments as we can. Now, let's talk Heisman a little bit before we dive into the actual football games to come. The top 5 Heisman voting. Travis Hunter wins the award. Ashton Jeanty, not too far behind him. Close race this year. Dylan Gabriel getting 3rd. Cam Ward in 4th. And then Cam Skattebo, the running back out of Arizona State, actually finished in 5th place of the Heisman voting. McCash, your thoughts? Any gripes with that?
Not really. I mean, it was a 2-man race, let's be honest.
I agree.
And then kind of at the last moment, they invited 2 other players just to be like, hey, we got to make it seem like it's not a blowout. Look, I wanted Jeanty to win. He was my favorite player the whole college season, and he made the playoffs.
Fun to watch.
He's very fun to watch. But look, I don't have any gripes with it going to Sanders at Colorado. My only thing I would say is, like, is he the best wide receiver in the country? No. Is he the best defensive player in the country? Probably not. But he's the best at doing both of them. Let's put it that way.
I think he may be the best athlete in college football, but to your point, I think there are some. It's interesting because there are some wide receivers that are more productive than he was. I think there are more wide receivers that may be better wide receivers in the NFL than him. But I think with Travis Hunter, it was just the athletic package, just that he could do it all. I don't know. Everybody seems to think that he's going to play cornerback in the NFL because he can't really run routes. Like that's the knock on him as a wide receiver. I don't know how his route tree is going to develop. He's a very talented guy, and so far that's really all he's needed to get open, that sort of deal. But I watched the cornerback tape and I'm like, man, I honestly, I don't know if he's physical enough to play man in the NFL. So like maybe you've got a zone heavy scheme you can use him in. I think it's just rare that we see a guy that can be as prolific as he's been in both positions. And I think that's ultimately what did it for him, was like that snap count is insane, playing both positions. And I really don't have an issue with it. My top 5, if I had to write them down, I went with Travis Hunter 1. That's who I would have awarded the Heisman to. Ashton Jeanty number 2. I would have had Cam Ward at 3. I know he kind of fizzled out as the season went along. I'm not the biggest fan of his tape in terms of his NFL prospects. Like, I think if you're a fan of like Will Levis, Daniel Jones kind of ball, you're going to get some more of that when Cam Ward makes it to the NFL. But I can't deny that he was.
So the Titans are going to pick him in the 3rd round next year.
That's what, man. There's a lot of Titans fans that want Cam Ward in the 1st round, and I'm just like, please do not. He is very much.
Repeat.
Yeah, he's very much like throwing off his back foot, throwing across his body, throwing into triple coverage. And it just so happens in college, a lot of those plays have come down his way, but I don't think it's going to translate to the NFL. But still, acknowledging just how prolific his season was, even against, less than stellar competition. Miami stumbled a couple of times as well, but I still think full body of work, Cam Ward was good enough for 3 over Dylan Gabriel, who I think really got a slow start in the Heisman race. Yeah. And if he had played like that back half of the season, if he had played the entire season like that, he's probably a more serious candidate. And then at number 5, I think I go with Jalen Milroe out of Alabama. I know the losses matter, but prolific season, good offense. There were a couple of times this year that he really took over a game. No disrespect to Cam Scatteraboo, but I know the 3 touchdown, 200-yard games came a couple of times for him. But I had him at 9th in my Heisman rankings. Wow. Was there anybody in the conversation beyond Hunter and Jeanty that you feel didn't? I'm not saying deserved the award, but was the conversation at least right? Were this group of guys, was there anybody outside of that you would have included?
No, the only one is Dylan at Oregon. I thought he maybe deserved a little more love, if you will, in the conversation for it, because he is on the lone undefeated team in the playoffs, the number 1 team for the majority of this season, and he's their leader. So, and this being a quarterback award, give or take, for the majority of its existence, I kind of thought he would be a little higher up in the tallies. But look, no issue with Hunter or Jeanty being 1 and 2. I personally would just have flipped them.
Yeah. Eddie's in the comments saying Curtis Rourke was a weird pick. Yeah, Curtis Rourke got some first place votes for the Heisman. So, those are the people out of Indiana turning in their ballots. It must have been, not to take away from his season, but just not the season that some of these other guys had. Also, talking about the Titans quarterback situation, Eddie brings up Drew Aller going back to Penn State. Doesn't look like he is going to be in the NFL draft. It's great for Penn State fans. And I honestly think with a little work, this is a guy that could end up being the top overall pick next spring. I was really starting to come around to his tape. The talent is there. Really devastating in a quarterback class that was already lacking in real bona fide quarterbacks. And I think he was one of the bona fide quarterbacks in it. So,
and I think him coming back shows how much of an impact the NIL deals are having in college football right now, because you're going to see less and less upperclassmen leaving early for the draft. And when they can stay, maybe get more money than they would, depending on where they would be drafted for that year, not have to play as much, not have to practice as much, and just still be able to go to school, play football, and still make, upwards of close to 6 figures, if not, there.
Hell, man, there's a rumor going around that Quinn Ewers has an offer on the table for $4 million to transfer to some team in the Big Ten if he wants to play another year.
If I'm a Texas fan, I'm telling him to go.
Yeah, you and me both, buddy. I can't remember if it was Michigan or Michigan State, but I'm like, I don't know about this dude. I think Texas, it's going to be time to hand the reins over to Arch Manning, see what he's got. Yeah, so it's a different world, man. I'm not going to be surprised if Jalen Milroe comes back for another year, because he's another guy that his draft stock is kind of wonky right now. The talent is clearly there. You're already having the expected conversation about, well, if he moves to running back, that's how he's going to find success in the NFL. But I don't know, man. I still like the arm talent there. A guy that could probably stand to come back and develop from the neck up a little bit longer. It's interesting to see. Now that is a possibility that we have to consider because the NIL stuff has changed the landscape of college football. So let's talk about the playoffs, McCash. Number one question, we've seen the bracket. We've seen the 12 teams. Clemson really caused a little bit of chaos on Championship Saturday, but ultimately SMU is the last team in. Alabama is the first team out. Did the committee get it right? Are these the right 12 teams?
Look, I'm not going to go as far as say these are the 12 best teams because I think you can make arguments for 3 other SEC teams that could be there.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
But with the way this playoff is constructed, I think they got the 12 teams right.
Yeah. 12 most deserving teams.
Yeah. Indiana would probably be the one that I would probably take out first out of the 12.
Okay. All right.
Just because of their lack of strength of schedule and the fact when they did play a good team in Ohio State, they got boat raced.
Yeah.
But I went back and did a little research to see how we did in predicting our 12 teams.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Would you like for me to say yours first?
I would love that because I know Virginia Tech and Iowa are in there, so I can't wait to answer for that.
So you put yours in order ranking. So you had Georgia 1,
yeah,
Oregon 2,
okay,
Clemson 3. So I'll give you props for Clemson. And then there's Utah, which we both swung and missed big on Utah. You had Alabama at 5, and then Texas, Ohio State, sadly Ole Miss, and then this is where Iowa peaks its head. Tennessee, Virginia Tech, and Memphis round out your 12. You went 6 of 12 in getting them correct.
So I got 50%.
Got 50%. And then your championship game is Oregon versus Georgia.
Still on the table. Well, actually, no. I think they would meet in the no. If they do meet the way the bracket's set up, it would be for the national championship. So,
and then for me, I went Ohio State 1, Georgia 2, Utah 3. So I struck out there. Miami 4 struck out there.
So close on that one, though.
Yeah, that was close. Oregon, Alabama. I had Notre Dame in my 12. You did not.
Yeah.
Texas, and then Ole Miss. I did not have Ole Miss. I did not get Ole Miss in, but I did predict SMU in the top 12.
That's a pretty good pick. That's some foresight right there.
And then I had Boise State and Memphis. I went 7 of 12, and I have Ohio State versus Georgia in the national championship game.
Which is, let's see, is that is still on the table?
It's still possible.
Yeah, because the winner of that Ohio State-Tennessee game goes to Oregon to play.
Yeah.
So, hey, you know what? That's not too bad in our business. It's not too bad. Sometimes you got to take a swing. We were both obviously high on Memphis and Utah.
Very
Alabama,
big on Utah.
Ole Miss. The Iowa pick, I think in retrospect, I wish I had backed off that. I didn't feel great about the Iowa pick at the time, but now seeing it, I'm like, you should have trusted your gut. Virginia Tech, I was all in. And they've got like a ton of talent going to the Senior Bowl, going to the Shrine Bowl. They have all this this NFL talent, and they went 6-6, and they are going to be in a bowl that is actually not even on our list to talk about. So that's great. That's some of my best work right there. Virginia Tech, a playoff team. Hey. Eddie is asking, you got Georgia making it without Beck. Not sure. I think that defense can hold it down that much. These were our preseason predictions.
Yeah.
It's not our predictions right now. It's still technically on the table. I could still technically be right. As Georgia and Oregon, but no, I don't think Georgia has been, even with Beck, I don't think Georgia has been the Georgia we necessarily expected them to be this season. So any major gripes? You mentioned 3 SEC teams that are probably, if you're lining these teams up on a neutral field, I think all 3 of those teams probably do beat SMU on a neutral field.
Or Indiana.
Yeah.
And probably Boise.
Probably Boise. Yeah. Probably
And
Arizona State.
Yeah.
No, we could
And
keep
honestly,
going.
probably Texas.
Who I don't know if I'm willing. Yeah, maybe Texas. I don't think Texas. It depends on who's quarterback. They got to make the switch, man. They got to go to Arch. So
And I'll even throw Penn State in there because James Franklin doesn't know how to win big games.
fair enough. Yeah, James Franklin gonna James Franklin. So
Yeah.
you know, I understand that those are probably better football teams, but my answer to that would be, well, if you're Alabama, don't lose to Vanderbilt.
Or
Don't
Oklahoma.
don't go to Oklahoma and just completely shit the bed and just get stifled by that defense. Like those are 2 6-6 football teams. All 3 of their losses were on the road. Not a good road team this season. So you were in a spot still to control your own destiny, and you couldn't win the critical games. And so I think they get the 12 teams right. I think they have the 12 most deserving teams. What do you think, just to play a fun hypothetical here, McCash, what do you think if Clemson had kept blowing out SMU, because it looked like it was going to be a blowout there for a little bit, and SMU battled back? Something that we talked about when previewing the show was Clemson, that program, Dabo Swinney, has experience in these championship games. SMU does not. It's their arrival at the party. Part of that did kind of feel like it came to fruition on Championship Saturday with them getting a little shell-shocked, a little deer in headlights in that game. But once they settled in, they battled back.
Yep.
But do you think it was close enough that if SMU had been blown out in that championship game, Alabama would be in the playoffs and SMU would not?
More than likely, yes, Alabama would have been in, but I would have had a gripe with that because the committee came out and said they were not going to penalize people for playing in their conference
Yeah.
championship games. Because if you're going to, then if I'm a team or a conference, I'm like, well, the conference isn't going to say anything because they want that extra money. But if I'm a team, I'm like, why do I show up and play?
Yeah, exactly. So I'm right there with you. I think they kind of backed themselves into a corner, so to speak, because there would have been some outcry against that if they had put Alabama in after saying we're not going to punish people for playing in a conference championship game. But I do think that it raises a really interesting question, because some of the logistics of the tournament are now being called into question because we've seen what the bracket looks like. And you look at a team like Texas, man, they got to go against Clemson, who is the 16th ranked team in the college football playoff. And if they win that, they've got to go to the 12th ranked team in the college football playoff. That's a pretty easy path to the Final Four. Now, I don't know. I kind of tend to think that people are sleeping on, again, Dabo's experience in big games like this. And I think I think people are kind of sleeping on how good this Arizona State offense is. I think those are going to be 2 fun matchups should we get Texas and Clemson and then Texas and Arizona State. But I do see the larger point from a seeding perspective. This is your 5th seed that is potentially having the easiest path to a Final Four, a semifinal appearance. So now the questions become, okay, we've done this, we've gone through with this plan, we've executed it, we've got our 12 teams, we've got this bracket organized, but it doesn't really look right. So now there's a sticky situation where if you just line up the 12 teams, rank them 1 through 12, the top 4 teams get buys. Well, then, like you were talking about a second ago, why the fuck would anybody want to play in a conference championship?
Yeah.
What would it matter at all?
Yeah,
And
if you're not
so,
going to reward me for playing that extra game, what's the point?
yeah, I mean, you could literally see like a team, if I'm in the top 12 and have everything to lose in a game like that, when not even just like the standing, like the potential to lose the game, but like injuries. Like that's another football game. That's the equivalent of going out there and getting in a car wreck's worth of damage to your body out there. So why?
We saw what happened to Georgia.
Boom. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, a fantastic example of that. Like, why would I ever want to do it? But if you want to make these conference championships mean something, like you kind of have to have it set up this way. I don't know. What's your read on this issue that has been raised several times? And I know Nick Saban was hot on the college football playoff announcement show talking about how we've got this team seated here. This team's got a bye. This team's got an easy path. This team's got a difficult path. You know, like I understand Tennessee fans are not too thrilled about going to Ohio State in the first round, and the winner of that, if they beat the Buckeyes, they go to Oregon to play the top team in the country. So
Well,
I don't
they
know.
go
I
to the
think it's
Rose Bowl.
well, fair enough. Touche. Yeah, they go to play Oregon. Yeah, but I think it's a fair question, and I don't think there's necessarily an easy answer to it. But what do you think about the logistics of how this thing has shaped up? Do you think it's fair or foul the way they're doing it?
Well, it didn't come out of nowhere. We all knew 2 years ago, however long it's been since this has been put in motion, that this was how it was lined up. It didn't
Yeah.
just drop on us, last 2 weeks ago when they announced the 12 teams. Like, this is how it shakes up. No, we've all known this. If you don't like Arizona State being the 4 seed or Boise State being the 3rd seed, how about the Big 12 just be better?
Yeah.
It's real simple. The ACC, be better.
Mm-hmm.
Your Power 4 schools, and granted, the Big 12 is there where Arizona State's at now, but the dominant schools of that conference of years past, hey, don't fucking suck as much.
Yeah.
Utah, be the Utah you and me thought they were going to be at the beginning of the year, and then you wouldn't have these people bitching. If Indiana didn't have this spectacular rise from the fucking depths of hell kind of season, nobody would be complaining about Alabama or Ole Miss being the 10 seed.
Yeah. Yeah, fair enough. I think that's a fair point.
Or better yet, like you mentioned earlier, to teams like Alabama and Ole Miss, don't lose games you're not supposed to lose.
Yeah, I think that's the easiest solution. But it's also kind of complicated because when you look at like conference play in the SEC versus conference play in the Big 12, and Arizona is rewarded for that with a bye. Meanwhile, Alabama doesn't even make it into the tournament. So I don't know. It's interesting because now we're getting into the kind of debate about Alabama and SMU. Well, SMU didn't play anybody, so now teams are going to stop scheduling marquee matchups. I don't know, man. Like I think this ultimately, I won't be surprised if this all ends with teams just playing conference games. Like,
well,
do away with the out of conference stuff altogether.
Let's go back to what you said about Alabama or teams like that. I'm going to use them as an example, not scheduling these high non-conference games. I'm like, you didn't lose those. You lost conference games.
Yeah.
You lost to 2 of the worst teams in the league this year, in Vanderbilt and Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Or do this, if you're so concerned about winning and not the dollar bills that come with it, leave the SEC and go to the Big 12 and dominate there.
Man, wouldn't that be something if some of these teams like, I don't know, Shane Beamer and Lane Kiffin rally to get out of the SEC? I don't know. It's a cash cow, but that would be a wild move. I don't know. I think there are options on the table, but ultimately, I do think that this format still, it's not just about championship Saturday. It's not just about those conference championship games, but I think these conference races, knowing the importance of winning your conference and getting into one of those bye week positions, like it improves the merit of the regular season as well. It makes those games meaningful at a time when everybody said this 12-team playoff was going to make the regular season meaningless. I didn't feel that way at all this year. Did you?
No, not any me. I love the regular schedule this year. Me following Memphis, I had, we were one of those teams regarded as getting that group of 5 spot. So I was very invested even after the Navy loss. I'm like, look, we have paths to get back into this. Let's it made me watch even more. And then you see teams like Vanderbilt, who were ruining other teams' seasons. Almost they got Alabama. They almost got Texas as well.
Mhm.
So I thought this was a great regular season from top to bottom for me.
Yeah, I do too. So I'm cool with it. And ultimately, I think the bigger picture here is that we're about to see this thing sort itself out beginning this weekend.
Yeah.
And if it's like some situation where like I don't know, the way it's set up, even if like Clemson goes on a run and wins this national championship, which I don't think they will.
No.
I don't think they'll see football past this weekend myself, but if they do, it's still like beating Texas, beating Arizona State, potentially beating Oregon, and then potentially beating like Georgia. Like, even if they do all of that, like, can you still say they're deserving of the national championship? And I would say yes, after
Yeah.
beating those teams, yeah. So it's going to sort itself out. And I think it's much ado about nothing. I think it's a lot of Alabama fans that are pretty ticked off that Alabama didn't get in the playoff, and it's as simple as that. So, any more thoughts on the organization of the playoff before we move on to talk about these games?
No, but I'll say one thing. What if by the end of next weekend, or no, it would be 2 weeks for
Yeah.
the quarterfinals. What if by the end of the quarterfinals, there's not a single SEC team standing?
Oh my God.
Because I can easily see Georgia losing if they don't have their quarterback.
Yeah.
Tennessee could lose this weekend. And me personally, I have Clemson beating Texas.
Okay.
So it's not far fetched to see one, possibly zero SEC teams in the quarter after in the semifinals.
What do you think about a Boise State, Arizona State national championship?
Look, the national championship's on my birthday. And I know if that game was to happen, I could afford to get into the game.
How about that? How about that? All right, let's talk about this week's action. Friday night, man, the sports books, at least by the numbers they are setting, do not think that these games are going to be particularly nail biters this weekend. Indiana is going to Notre Dame. The Irish are 7.5-point favorites. This is a big battle for the state of Indiana. It's going to be another big test for that Hoosiers program and Kurt Signetti's squad. Curtis Rourke, apparently Heisman finalist Curtis Rourke. A big test for that offense going up against this Notre Dame defense. It is a big time strength versus strength matchup. We saw what happened against Ohio State when Indiana stepped up in competition. McCash, what do you think the odds are that they're able to replicate or I'm sorry, avoid replicating the result from that game?
Look, I don't see any chance in hell that the Hoosiers are going to get this upset victory.
I don't either.
No, it's I think Notre Dame, yes, people are going to hark back to the Northern Illinois loss and like, but look, that was so long ago. It might as well have been last season.
Yeah.
Marcus Freeman just got his extension. They think highly of him. I've been a big fan of his ever since he took that job. I talked about it here on this podcast, 2 years ago now.
Yeah.
And so I'm all in on Notre Dame. I honestly think Notre Dame's going to make the championship game now that Carson Beck is potentially out for the playoffs.
I like the Irish big in this game, and you took the words right out of my mouth. I'm not going to be surprised if Notre Dame presses Georgia. This defense is playing really good football right now.
Yeah.
They've got a lot of NFL talent on that squad. I think they should handle their business against Indiana. I think there's going to be a lot of people that think they're going to bet the Hoosiers staying within a touchdown because of that offense, but I don't know, man. This is going to be one of those physical kind of games. And when we saw Indiana try to answer the bell against a more physically imposing opponent, they withered. And I expect more of the same in this matchup as well. And to your point, I do think Notre Dame is good enough to beat Georgia in its current iteration. So that would be a fun game to watch in the second round. The rest of the games take place on Saturday, December 21st. Penn State hosting SMU. The Nittany Lions, 8.5-point favorites. What do you think of this one?
I'm scared of this one because I do think James Franklin might win a big one, but this isn't technically a big one. it's the playoffs, so that makes it big.
Yeah.
But your opponent is not a big marquee name
Yeah, sure.
in today's college football. They're making a name for themselves in their first year in the ACC. They definitely, shocked everybody but me by making the playoffs because I predicted them in the playoffs. With that said, I'm hoping the Mustangs pull out the big upset, but I think Penn State gets the job done. But I think SMU keeps it close enough to cover. With I'll say one thing: they Penn State may boat race them if the fact they get up to Pleasant Valley and those Mustangs look around at the whiteout and they get way overwhelmed. Then it might be Penn State going for blood at that point.
I like SMU to cover here. I do like Penn State to win. 8.5 is a big spread. I feel like the experience of that ACC championship for SMU was critical in the development of that program. In a way, it's like, okay, we got the butterflies out of our stomach. Let's do more second half SMU than first half SMU from that Clemson game. And I think they have the talent. I think they've got a really good quarterback in Kevin Jennings. It's a lot of fun to watch. I know they haven't played anybody, but from a talent standpoint, I think as far as the skill positions go, I think they can hang with Penn State in a shootout. I think where this matchup is going to be decided is in the trenches, and I don't know how well SMU can hold up in that regard, but I do think there's a lot of talent on this team, and they have the quarterback to make this an interesting ball game. So I'm gonna take SMU plus 8.5 to cover, but Penn State to win and go on to play Boise State, the winner of that matchup. So Boise State's awaiting that one. Clemson at Texas, the Longhorns favored by 11.5. You have already called for the upset outright. Explain your rationale for that pick.
I don't trust Texas offensively. I don't trust Quinn Ewers. I know they have a phenomenal defense, but I also know Dabo Swinney is the head coach at Clemson. When it comes to playoff situation football, he's very good at what he does when it comes to X's and O's. I think he's going to have this Tigers team ready for the challenge. Them going to Austin is not going to scare them because they've been in big games and big situations before. I think it'll be a really close game, but I think Ewers may have a turnover or two that costs the Longhorns in the long run.
We're split on this one because as much as I'm intrigued by Cade Klubnik, another guy that could potentially be in this quarterback class or could potentially come back for another year, as much as I'm intrigued by his skill set, I just don't think offensively the Clemson Tigers are a good matchup for this Texas Longhorns defense. I think it's going to be tough for Clemson to move the ball at all. I think there's a lot of talent on the Longhorns. I think it's going to overwhelm Clemson. I don't know that they necessarily win by 12 points, but I could see this being a sort of like 24-9 kind of ball game in favor of the Texas Longhorns. So we're split on that one. You're going Clemson, I'm going Texas. But just for fun, let's say Clemson gets through. Who do you like in a Clemson-Arizona State matchup?
Well, since it'll be closer to home, I'm going to go Clemson. I'll ride them because it's in the Peach Bowls where they're going to match up. Arizona State would have to travel pretty much across country. Clemson will it's like a 45-minute drive or hour drive to Atlanta from Clemson, South Carolina. They don't have to get on a plane.
I don't know if this is controversial, but I'm going to say it anyway. I think I like Arizona State no matter who wins this game.
I'm cool with that too.
I like Sam Leavitt, Cam Scatteraboo. I don't know. I'm just saying. I think people are sleeping on how good Arizona State is. They're going to come back to bite me. It's going to be a Virginia Tech situation all over again. But if I'm a Sun Devils fan, I'm feeling pretty good about the spot the program's at right now.
Yeah.
Lastly, we got a big one. We got the Tennessee Volunteers going to Columbus, Ohio, to play the Ohio State Buckeyes. This one surprises me a bit, McCash. Ohio State favored by 7. So they think that Ohio State is going to be a touchdown better than the Tennessee Volunteers in Columbus on Saturday night. The winner gets Oregon. Let's talk about this one. What's your read on it?
Look, I know, like I said with Clemson, Tennessee has been in big situations before. They've played in daunting situations going to LSU at night, going to Oxford, Alabama, Florida, to the Swamp. So they'll be prepared for this matchup, but I just think Ohio State has too much horsepower for this Vols team, especially coming in with a freshman at quarterback. I think he's going to be a little bit of a deer in headlights, and he's kind of struggled in play lately. So I like the Buckeyes getting the win here, and I actually like the Buckeyes to cover.
Man, I'm going Tennessee in an upset.
We split
I don't.
again.
I think people are making way too much about the cold weather. It's been just as cold in Knoxville this week. I think cold weather, you think about the team that can run the ball and play defense, and I think you check both of those boxes in favor of the Volunteers. I think they've got a better defensive front. I think they're going to get after this Ohio State offense, and I think they're going to be able, people think about this Josh Heupel offense, stretching the field, lining the wide receivers out way beyond the hash marks and running those choice routes and getting the ball out quickly and up tempo and all that stuff. But this team with Dylan Sampson has run the ball quite effectively all season long. I think it's going to be one of those games. I think Tennessee's going to surprise some people. I don't think it's going to be the fun fireworks show that people have come to expect out of this Tennessee offense, but I think they're going to run the ball and control the tempo of the game. And I'll say this. I think Tennessee's good enough to beat Oregon too. So we're at least similar in how we look at this matchup, and that the winner of this could potentially match up well with Oregon.
Before we move on, let me mention about weather. That Friday night in Columbus, it's a high of 36, and there's over a 50% chance of snow Friday night. And then Saturday, game time before the game, the high for the day is 29 degrees with a low of 17.
Woo-hoo!
I don't know this Volunteers team is ready for 17-degree temperatures.
Man, let me add it. That is football weather right there. Let's go. All right, some other bowl games I did want to talk about. I don't know about you, man, but the way adding all these games through the playoffs and kind of taking away some of the upper echelon teams for these other matchups to choose from, it's kind of stretched the bowl season a little thin, in my opinion. I looked at this year's slate and was just kind of like, man, I don't know. I found 8 games that I'm really stoked to watch. And there are some like sicko matchups. Like I'm really stoked to watch Ohio and Jacksonville State, 2 conference champions, duking it out. But like from the national scale, didn't really seem like there's a lot of marquee matchups. There's only a handful of ranked matchups remaining. What are your general impressions on this slate of bowl games this year and how the college football playoff impacted that?
I mean, it's impacted it gratefully, but I've always thought there's too many bowl games to begin with. And now that you're basically taking 12 teams away from that scenario, or let's say 10, because you always have 2 in your national championship game, or 4 for the playoffs before this year. So 8 to 10 teams that you've taken away from that pool. And I get you. There are a couple of intriguing matchups, but there's nothing that just like really wows me. I mean, Oklahoma versus Navy. I mean, that's kind of a snooze fest for me.
That's going to be oh boy, that's going to be something.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, there's a couple that I care about, but for the most part, I'm like, we could do without some of these games.
Bowl season has technically already kicked off with the something salute to the military bowl or whatever. Really good game on Saturday night between Western Michigan and South Alabama. If you guys didn't catch that, it was fun to watch. But really getting into the meat of the schedule starting tomorrow night, and then there's going to be bowl games throughout the week. But I do want to touch on it because West Virginia is bringing Rich Rodriguez back to be their head coach next season. This is a team that disappointed quite a bit. Talking about West Virginia in the Frisco Bowl, they're going up against your Memphis Tigers. Your Memphis Tigers are favored by 4.5 in this one. What's your read on where this team is at? Is this a game like you expect Memphis to like go in and really push to get this win?
Yeah, absolutely. As far as I've heard, nobody is left. No transfers, nobody sitting out. Nothing like from what I've heard, we have our whole arsenal. West Virginia has already lost some pieces to the transfer portal and such. and people just not wanting to play because they're graduating and such. I definitely think Memphis goes in with that 4.5 spread and easily wins this game. This will be our second year in a row beating a Power 4 school. So Iowa State last year, and we'll take down the Mountaineers this year. I think we're gonna see an 11-2 Memphis Tigers team when it's all said and done.
How many wins did they have last year?
With the bowl game, 10. We had 9 regular season and then 10 with the bowl game. This year we won 10 regular season, going for the 11th win tomorrow night.
How often are back-to-back 10-win seasons for the Memphis Tigers?
It's happened, I think, once in history, and it's been in the last 20 years. I don't know if it was Norvell or Fuente who was coach at the time. I'd have to go back. It was probably Norvell because it was probably the Penn State Cotton Bowl year and probably that previous year as well. But I think this will be our first 11-win season ever.
Program headed in the right direction, man. It's great.
Depends who you talk to here.
Well, fair enough.
Yeah.
But it's crazy to think, like, I don't know, this team really wasn't all that far away from a college football playoff spot.
No.
I don't know.
There's a couple of hiccups, man.
Yeah. What do you think they would have done had they gotten to Army in that championship game?
Oh, we would have done to them way more than Tulane did. Oh, I mean, no, I'm sorry, Tulane lost. Tulane wasn't ready for the cold. I think we would have done well because we would have hosted.
Yeah.
I think we would have hosted, and then you would really have an 11 or 10-2. Oh, no, 11-2 because that's an extra game. An 11-2 team outside of the playoffs that's a conference champion. Some heads would have rolled. I would have a problem with SMU and Indiana at that point.
Yeah, man, it's crazy. Maybe next year for the Memphis Tigers. Maybe they can keep this train rolling.
Hey, we got a stud quarterback coming in next year, so I'm ready.
2 teams in the Birmingham Bowl that have pretty big heart, man. We've seen this Vanderbilt team really put on some really gut check time kind of performances this season. Remember Georgia Tech taking Georgia to 8 overtimes on Black Friday. These are 2 teams that are like big heart teams, which you would think makes for a pretty good matchup. In the Birmingham Bowl, you just have to assume that everybody's going to show up and play. The Yellow Jackets favored by 2.5 in this one. Expected or surprised by that?
It's hard for me to say, not knowing like who's opted out and such, but I imagine Vandy's quarterback is playing because he's trying to get another year of eligibility.
Yeah.
And he doesn't want to go out like this if he gets denied. So I really like Vanderbilt in this game. Both of these teams have really ruined some other teams this season. Georgia Tech started the year off by basically crippling Florida State, so much so that their coach had to give $4.5 million back to the school, essentially.
Whew.
And then Vanderbilt doing what they did to Alabama, and Georgia Tech really should have put a nail in the Georgia Bulldogs' coffin this year. To be honest, I think the Birmingham Bowl is one of the most non-playoff bowl games that I'm looking forward to the most.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Alabama lands in the ReliaQuest Bowl. They are taking on Michigan, which on paper, everybody's like, oh, the Rose Bowl rematch. This is going to be, 2 really good storied programs. Crimson Tide favored by 10 in this one. Michigan having I think it's safe to say it was a disappointing season. I mean, I don't think anybody expected them to go on another run to a national championship with all of the roster turnover, change in coaching, that sort of thing. But I do think the way they got to 6-6 probably was pretty disappointing. But I don't know how I feel about this one, McCash. I don't know how I feel about double-digit spreads in bowl games in the age of NIL and the transfer portal and the NFL draft coming. I don't know who's going to show up, who's not going to show up. I'm scared to death to take Alabama in the points here. If in a perfect world when it's all systems go, I think Alabama boat races Michigan, but this feels like quite a fall for a team that just a couple of weeks ago thought they were going to be in the 12-team playoff.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't like the double-digit line as well. I wouldn't be honestly shocked if Michigan wins this game. I'm not expecting them to. And I only say I wouldn't be shocked because of the fact how much of Alabama is going to show up and care. Uh,
Mhm.
just getting left out at the last minute, really, in a playoff spot. I know a lot of people haven't necessarily left the program. I know a few people have left the program in the transfer portal, in fact, for Alabama. But with that said, I still think they have enough talent to beat this Michigan team. It's just whether or not that talent wants to show up.
It's going to be really interesting. I think it's going to be I think it's going to be a testament to the locker room at Alabama, how the players are responding to this disappointing season, and I think it's going to be a measure of Kalen DeBoer's message to his players. And I think if they show up in this game, I think you look at a situation where you say, okay, they're starting to get the new culture in there. You tear down the Saban era, you build up the DeBoer era. If they show up for this game, I think it's a testament to what's going on inside that building. If not, man, I don't know. We'll see. You might be able to just brush it off as a meaningless bowl game. You probably don't want to read too much into it, but I do think it will say something. It'll say less than zero, more than nothing about where that program is at if these players are disinterested and come out flat. I do want to talk about Nashville's game, the Music City Bowl. McCash, how the fuck do you get people to go sit in the cold to watch Iowa versus Missouri?
So I can't speak for Missouri. I really can't speak for Iowa, but I know Iowa State fans travel and they travel hard. And when they get to where they're going for the bowl game, they drink the city dry. They did it last year in Memphis and then a couple years prior when they were at the Liberty Bowl as well. So everybody on Broadway bartending should be really excited for this matchup if the Iowa Hawkeye fans are anything like Cyclone fans.
The Tigers are favored by 3 in this one. Finish your thought. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, I don't have anything to say about Missouri because I haven't believed in them at all this year.
Yeah.
So not really keeping up with anything Iowa related this year. I'm going to go with the Hawkeyes to get the upset, the slight upset win.
If Caleb Johnson plays, they're going to run all over Missouri. I like that one. I can't imagine Missouri's going to have too much talent on the field. They got a lot of guys thinking about the NFL draft right now. So I don't know. I'm going Iowa too. Let's talk about the 3 non-playoff game ranked matchups.
Okay.
Let's start with the team you just mentioned, Iowa State taking on Miami in the Pop-Tarts Bowl. The Hurricanes are favored by 4. Another situation, we keep saying it, but depending on who shows up, I think Miami probably has the better talent, but Iowa State might have the better culture, the better system, the more established foundation, so to speak. You mentioned them traveling pretty well as a fan base. This one, I think the highlight of this one is going to be when they put the giant Pop-Tart in the toaster, though. I can't say that I'm really looking forward to this matchup myself.
No, I think Iowa State, again, their fans will travel well. They're going somewhere warm weather, so they'll really look forward to it. So I expect the Cyclones to really represent in this bowl game. Miami fans, I mean, granted, it's just a couple hours drive up to Orlando, but are they going to really care about being there?
Is Cam Ward going to play?
Yeah, is Cam Ward going to play? I mean, Rocco Beck will obviously play for Iowa State. He's only a sophomore. The thing that hinders me from picking Iowa State in a win here is how they just got trounced by Arizona State in that conference championship game last week.
No answer. Yeah.
Regardless, I'm going to ride with the Cyclones in this one.
There you go. I think I'm leaning the same way. I don't know. We'll see what the status of Cam Ward is, but in this case, I kind of like the culture, the job that Matt Campbell has done there for years has just been amazing. I like that program quite a bit, and I think they're built to win a game like this. So I'm going to go with the Cyclones as well. BYU and Colorado, a Big 12 matchup, technically, even though they didn't meet in the regular season. BYU and Colorado in the Alamo Bowl. This one, man, if everybody played full, all systems go, this one would be a fun little shootout. The Buffs are favored by 3. I can't imagine Shedeur Sanders and company are going to want to play when you're talking about guys that could be like top 5 picks in the NFL draft. But we'll see. We'll see how that plays out. Another case of where I think you strip down the talent, who's going to play, who isn't, and you look at the systems. And I think from where I sit, I think I trust BYU a little more than Colorado after the seasons that they've had. Where do you stand on the Alamo Bowl, McCash?
I'm with you. I'm running with the Cougars on this one. I think Shador and Travis will probably look at Dion and be like, "Hey, Dad. Hey, homie. We got a lot of money to go make down here. We've
Yeah.
made some good money here, but we're about to go make real money over here. So I think you understand why we sit this one out. But at the same time, they might look at him and be like, "Hey, I want to. This would be like the last time my dad coaches me. So
Yeah.
maybe I do play one last time." But honestly, I couldn't. I personally, dad or not, I wouldn't play in this game. So I like BYU.
The interesting thing is for Shador, if the questions have been level of competition, do you want to take the opportunity to play a good ranked opponent to get the tape out there for the NFL scouts? I don't think so. I know it's something that some players consider, and I don't know if Shador is locked into the first, like the top 10 to 15 picks. Is he locked in enough where he doesn't have to worry about it, would be the question. So, I mentioned Cam Ward. To me, Cam Ward is a guy that you need to put some good tape against a good team out there if you're expecting to be a first round draft pick. I think he could stand to play in their bowl game. Shador, I don't know, man. I think he's good enough to unequivocally be QB1 in this upcoming class. I don't think he needs to play this game, but I could see the argument being made for him to play in this game.
I think the risk of injury way outweighs anything
Yeah.
I'm going to put on tape in this game.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Last game I want to talk about. I got to talk about this Citrus Bowl because this could be like the sicko matchup of the season. I don't think people realize how good Brett Bielema's Illinois offense has been. They are playing South Carolina, a team that was really a lot of fun to watch. They've got a quarterback down there, Lenora Sellers, that could be a first-round draft pick one of these days in a few years in the NFL draft. I think they're going to want to get him reps if he elects to play. If not, man, I don't care. I think this South Carolina team is going to show up for this one. I think Illinois is going to show up for this one. I think Brett Bielema is wanting to get a big bowl win to kind of validate the progress that he's made since taking over the Fighting Illini. I think this is going to be a fun matchup. The Gamecocks are favored by 9.5, but I won't be surprised if this honestly ends up being a shootout with these two offenses. But your take on the Citrus Bowl?
Yeah, I would definitely take the over in this one, no matter what it is. I just really like South Carolina in this, and I say this because of just how their season ended. I mean, they weren't Arizona State level of hot, but they were one of the better teams in the country to watch. Like I said, they had some bad losses, not in fact to bad teams, but in the way they lost, especially that Ole Miss loss that they took. But what they win, they won what 6 straight, I think is what they ended up at. I'm trying to pull it up, and then everything just went haywire on my phone. But yeah, including a rival win against Clemson that made the playoffs. So they're a team I think is going to come in and be like, hey, we want to show you one last time just how close we were this year. So I like Carolina. I don't know if they're going to cover such a big spread, but I would lean towards them money line and take the over.
There you go. Any other games that you want to bring up? Any other matchups you want to talk about before we get on out of here? Because we're at the end of my notes.
Yeah, it's not really a matchup. I just didn't know until about 3 minutes ago that Snoop Dogg has his own bowl game.
Yeah, he's doing the Arizona Bowl?
Yeah, Miami of Ohio versus Colorado State. I know nothing about either team from this year, but the fact Snoop Dogg, I hope he's the halftime entertainment at least.
Yeah, Miami of Ohio, they got a lot of senior leadership on there. I think it's Blaine Gabbert's little brother playing quarterback. I don't know if he's injured or not. I think he got injured in the MAC championship game. Colorado State made some noise in the Mountain West. It looked there for a hot minute like they might push UNLV for that right to play Boise in that game. Two programs kind of trending in the right direction. Should be two teams that really want it. That's like the the two types of bowl games you have are like the playoff games where everything matters, and then you have these little like low tier bowl games where like the teams are just so happy to be there that they want to win. Everything in between is just like meaningless drivel. But those two ends of the spectrums, that's where you get the hard fought bowl games, like Saturday night's bowl game between South Alabama and Western Michigan. Really good game.
And
all right,
McCash. One last one before we go real quick. I just think it's funny that you're having a bowl game inside a Major League Baseball stadium, pitting two teams, two schools that are perennial Final Four teams, and UConn and North Carolina.
Yeah.
So I just find the humor in that. But that's all I have. Let's get out of here.
That's going to be a good one too. 8-4 UConn. 8-4 UConn.
Oh.
Who would have seen that coming?
God bless them.
Yeah. All right. That's going to do it for us for the year 2024. As a matter of fact, we're going to take a break for a few weeks, enjoy some time with our family and friends for the holidays. We hope you all get to do the same. Thank you for supporting the College Football Roundup for another season. We will be back in 2025 to break down the playoffs so far and keep this train rolling as we approach the end of another season. He is the utility man, Stephen McCash. I'm Big Natural Stoney Keeley, and until next time, you stay classy.